We have Catherine from Calgary. We have Kimberly. Hi, Kimberly from Haircut on Wheels. I was just saying haircut. Oh, God, do I need uh, Innovatech Solutions is Gail Green, I believe. Yep, I think if I'm correct. So welcome to the last session in the April webinar series. And I'm thrilled to have our speaker and presenter is Angela Height, who is also a chair of Grow Your Biz and a member of Grow Your Biz. And Angela, all of you have her bio, but I'll just share a little bit about it. Angela is the founder and senior consultant of Chrysalis People Solutions. It's a business consulting firm, as you can guess, but she deals with both small and medium-sized business. But basically what Angela does is provide very smart solutions and strategies that accelerate business growth. Her background is that she has owned companies in the past, and she also built a large business in Ontario with a 7-figure agency and a team of 25 employees. And she served 500 Fortune clients that included names that you will be very familiar with, like AT&T, Sprint, Honeywell, Spar Aerospace, CIBC, BMO, Merrill Lynch, Sun Life, and Rogers. So a very high-level, sophisticated client base. I'm thrilled to have her here today to talk about team rebuilding strategies, because and she'll talk a little bit about herself, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew that we are going to take questions at the end. So during the presentation, could you please just put your question in chat, and Alicia will, who's in the top corner as I see her, will keep track of the questions, and then we'll open it up for Angela at the end. So I guess I should introduce myself, because there's some people I don't recognize on the phone. So I want to make sure that I'm Barbara Mowat. I'm the founder and president of Grow Your Biz. And in my corner to the right is Marg Hatchie, who is the managing director for Ontario and Eastern Canada. And so many of you will know her as well. So welcome, and over to you, Angela. Enjoy the webinar with all of your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Barb. Thanks for the introduction, and I'm glad everybody can make it over here. I'm gonna just quickly start sharing my screen, and then we'll move forward. So as Barb said, basically going to be speaking about post-COVID HR strategy, which is basically your rebuilding thing. So now that we're in a point where businesses are basically starting to look at reopening, possibly bringing back on their team as the COVID cases start to drop in some of the areas, and as various governments release plans on cautiously reopening the economy, and also with this new subsidy that the government has released, where 75% of employee wages are going to be covered. All those things are pointing towards the idea of actually reopening again, which is a perfect time for you to take a look at your team to make sure that you come back with even a stronger team. So as small businesses, what we tend to do is we tend to grow quite organically, which means that we respond to customer demands and we hire according to that customer demand. And sometimes that means that you have to hire quite quickly. And you may find that later it turns out that those people were not an ideal fit. So because you've been so busy and the hiring process is often such a hassle, oftentimes you've learned to live with it. But in this particular situation right now that we're in, it's almost like everybody's taking a pause. So we're in a reboot, kind of in a reboot sort of situation where we can take a point right now and basically go forward with a new team and take a look at that. So that's what I'm going to be covering here. So we're going to do that team upgrade. So as also in terms of as you're looking at pivoting, so repivoting your business, that might mean that you're actually changing some of the services that you're offering. You might need to take a look at the people that you currently have to see whether or not they're fit. So this is what I'm specifically going to be covering today. So I'm going to be looking at a simple rating system to quickly assess your existing team. And we're actually going to do it together. So I want you to grab a piece of paper, but in a minute, so you can grab that or have it close at hand. We're going to do a team rebuilding blueprint to upgrade your team. So we're going to use that blueprint and that document that we're going to create together. We're going to do a hiring strategy to supplement your best people. And then the last piece is a communication strategy to keep your team connected and engaged. We're going to cover a lot of information over here. So just pop your questions into the chat. I've actually got the chat going on my iPhone on the side over here so I can see it. So I will actually comment and actually bring in the answers to the questions if you do have questions when I see them pop up as well. So that's what we're going to be covering. So just to top off in terms of what Barb was saying. So this is a little bit more about me. On the February 28th, I just celebrated 26 years in business for myself. Over those 26 years, I've owned 4 different businesses. My latest business is actually the Dream Team Solutions, which is a resource site for people management skills and leadership skills for small business owners. I built my second business up to a team of 25 people in sales in the multi-7 figures before I sold it. My education is in behavioral psychology, HR, and streamlining business operations. And I've helped hundreds of business clients build better teams. And my clients were primarily large organizations in the first half of my career, but for the past 15 years, I've worked with small business owners under 100 employees. And some of the bigger clients are down there at the bottom of my of the screen there. So it gives you an idea in terms of what I've done. So right now, what's happening is that work is changing. So as we start talking about reopening stores, reopening businesses, work is actually changing. So the whole idea that any company that had any resistance to the idea of doing remote work, not going to be there anymore, because we've all had to actually go to remote work. So their issues with it have actually disappeared. So remote work is going to continue to be something that's going to happen in the future. So whether or not that means that your whole team is remote, whether it means that part of your team is remote and then part of your team is not remote and working on site, it all means that there's different things that you need to look at when it comes down to actually managing your team. Also education. Education has gone online. So, you know, if a company has any type of upgrades in terms of skills, those types of things will be done online, self-directed as well. And then finally, it's just, you know, travel. Travel has probably changed drastically. As we've gotten used to the idea of going to other places or conferences or that kind of thing online, I think businesses are going to stop doing the whole traveling thing as well, unless it's specifically required to do as well. So those are some of the things that are actually going to be happening. And these are not new things, right? All the things that we're talking about, they're not new things. They've been around for quite some time, but this is the first time that businesses had to go in mass to online. So recent Time magazine article basically said that the whole COVID thing is the largest remote team work experiment ever in the case of the world, right? Because all of a sudden here we are, we went into work one day and all of a sudden we were told that work was going to go online starting tomorrow, starting Monday, whatever. And everybody was kind of thrown in without much training on it. So those are all kinds of things that are going to need to change. So the very first thing that you want to do as a result of all these changes, and you're taking a look at your team, is you want to actually assess your team. So I'm going to give you a very simple system. It's 3 steps. You're going to take a look at the ones down on the right-hand side with the little red guy there. Those are your squeaky wheels. And so you can pop into the chat window there. What are some characteristics of squeaky wheels? What makes them squeaky? Performance issues? What are some others? Anything else? Okay, so these are usually, yeah, performance, complainers, They're the ones who take a lot of energy to actually manage those types of individuals. So here's, so what I want you to do, the second category in the middle over there, these are your steady eddies. So these are the people that are just your consistent, they are always reliable, they're always there, they're always, you can trust them to do what they need to do. And then the ones in the green are your stars. So these are the three different things that I want you to do. So we're going to go, I want you to grab a piece of paper and do 4 columns on the piece of paper. Everybody got a piece of paper? And then I want you to do 4 rows on the paper as well. And then I'm going to ask you to put these things into it. So step 1 are your stars. Step 2, your squeaky wheels. And step 3 are your steady eddies. And I want you to look at who, and you want to look at why. So the first 2, like in terms of who your stars are and who your squeaky wheels are, off the top of your head, when you take a look at your team, it's really quick for you to probably answer those questions in terms of who. And you can quickly write down some of the characteristics of why they're in that area. So what makes a star a star? Why do you consider them to be a star? Do they always get the job done? Do they always go above and beyond? Do they always get praises from teammates and customers? Those types of things. So those are some of the whys that you have over there. And then the last thing that you want to put in is that for your squeaky wheels, you want to take a look at, is it a lack of skills or willingness? So those are 2 different things. So sometimes the people who are not performing that well don't perform well because they don't have the ability to actually perform well. So if they don't have the ability, it is possible to actually train them up. On the other hand, some people don't perform well because they're not willing to perform well. That, on the other hand, is more difficult to fix. In fact, I would say that you want to probably take a look at letting those individuals go. So the questions really come down to, can it be fixed? What do they need to fix it? And what's the time and dollar cost involved in actually fixing it? And think of the time and dollar cost as well, is if you're going to actually upgrade somebody's skills. So let's say that one of your squeaky wheels doesn't have the skills to do a component of their particular job. When you look at it, you might say, okay, they need, let's say, customer service training. Let's put that in, say. They need customer service training. And the customer service training could be a combination of training that you'll do online. And then another portion of it is they'll actually be sitting with one of your great customers or great customer service people so that they can train them from that perspective. So the time is also a component of what you're actually looking at as well, because that'll determine the cost of how much time they actually take. And the question is it worth it? So those are questions that you want to ask there. And then your steady eddies. This is for the keeners. So these are the types of questions that you want to ask before you put your people on board as well. Is, your steady eddies, these are the people that you can trust on a regular basis. So can they become stars is the question. And what do they need to become stars? And what's the time and cost again? So again, what's involved in actually doing that? And is this something you want to start now, or do you want to wait till later? So those are a couple of things that you want to do. The main thing over here, when you go through this, is the why. So the why under each one of those columns is the key to actually determine the rest in terms of doing your blueprint and in terms of doing your hiring strategy. So let's move to that right now. So the team rebuilding blueprint. So this is 5 easy steps that we're going to go through to rebuild your team. So let's go back to step 1, which is your stars. So the first question that you want to ask is, are your stars in charge of what they're best at? Do they specifically have skills that you could use? Because if you've pivoted your business and you've looked at different services that you're offering, do your stars have the skills to actually do that? And do you need to adjust your team structure right now in order to get to that point where they're actually using their best abilities, their talents, their abilities, their qualities that make the biggest difference and the biggest impact and will have the biggest impact on your business. The second thing is you want to take a look at your steady eddies. So these are the reliable people that day in and day out consistently do the work and do it well. So do your steady eddies support the right stars? Is there a different way of actually organizing your people so that there's a better fit in terms of personalities, in terms of skill sets, that type of thing? So what you want to do is you want to answer that particular question there. And then the next question is, you know, how would you adjust them? So how would you change that if you needed to? The next area is here is you want to take a look at your holes. So once you've taken a look at your stars and your steady eddies and your organization in terms of where it is right now, what's missing and where are the holes? So what skills are actually missing? What's missing for you to actually do the work that you need to do? And how soon do you need to fill those? Because, you know, if work goes back, it's probably going to go back on a much more gradual basis as opposed to how it, you know, how it ended or how it stopped just recently. Because what happened when we recently stopped is like all of a sudden it just stopped, right? And everybody went to a point of this holding pattern that we're currently in. But when we go back to work and things start to move back again, it's going to be gradual. Just like most of the plans of the government that have been releasing, like the recent one that the Ontario government has put out, you know, it's an 11-page document. It's really about gradually putting things in place so that you can get to a point where, you know, everything is back to normal, but it's gradual. So it's the same idea is going to happen with your particular business, is that you're going to have to look at it from a gradual moving forward. So you need to decide in terms of who's going to need to be hired. And I'll go into more detail on the hiring piece in a minute. And then the last point is your squeaky wheels. So your squeaky wheels, I mean, they've been part of your organization. Maybe they're not the perfect fit anymore. Maybe you've determined that it's too costly to actually upgrade them, or they don't have the willingness to do so. So the first question you need to answer is what intellectual property or skills need to be transferred? So if they've got a particular skill or they've been taking care of something specific in your organization, you're going to want to take a look at what needs to actually be transferred to somebody else in the organization so you don't lose that. And then you need to terminate. Now, one of the things that I've noticed with a lot of my clients recently is that when they did the layoffs, when their businesses kind of shut down, when they did the layoffs, they didn't necessarily do it according to labor standards, which means they basically had a quick talk with them and said, okay, we're shutting the doors, therefore you're off. At some point, you're actually going to have to do it according to labor standards, which means that you're going to have to do the typical notice. So the notice period in terms of termination. So if you're going to terminate them, you're either going to have to give them notice or you're going to have to give them pay in lieu of notice. So this will cost you if you actually need to let go some of your people. So that's one thing that you need to look at as well. So let's just do, and then the last thing is that you want to actually take your stars and enlist them to work out your plan. So as opposed to doing this in isolation, once you've actually identified your stars, talk to them and get them together to actually build out your strategy in terms of staggered return to work, and look at some of the scenarios that are there and enlist them in actually helping you as well. So that's step 5. So let's just do a quick recap. So you've gone through a simple, you know, stars, steady, and squeaky people that you have there. Simple system just to rate your people. You've gone through the why list. So why are each of the people in those particular categories? And those characteristics in the why area is your gold, because that is what you're going to take a look at for your hiring strategy. And this is something that I find most business owners that I speak to who have been clients and such in the past, is that they don't always take a look at why people are where they are. So let's take a look at the example of the squeaky wheels. You hired those squeaky wheels in the past. Why did you hire them? What did they do to convince you to hire them, even though they didn't turn out to be as good as you thought they would be? So what was it that made that difference? So I want you to really think about that why. So why are they squeaky wheels now? And why did you hire them in the first place? Because they obviously didn't come across as squeaky wheels, right, when you hired them, or else you never would have actually hired them, right? So that why list becomes really clear in terms of what the skills are to be successful in your organization. So those are all the whys that you'll find under the stars. And then all the characteristics that are would be a failure in your particular organization are the characteristics that you listed out under the squeaky wheels. So that becomes the basis of your hiring criteria. And then in terms of you creating a team rebuilding blueprint. So that was the 5 different steps that we just covered over here, which is again, taking a look at your stars, taking a look at, your steady people in terms of how they support your stars, and then what are your holes, and then how you go through the step-by-step to get to that particular point, and also letting go of the people that are not necessarily important to you anymore. The last thing is you're enlisting your stars to initiate re-entry. It's always better to actually take a look at your organization when you're working with the people that work well in your organization together, because you'll have better ideas in terms of how you actually implement everything. You're increasing their engagement as well. So by enlisting their help, you're actually helping them to do better for you as well. Yes, I am. So here's a question I just got asked. So are you suggesting using your stars for brainstorming? Yes, definitely. Everything that we're doing right now is unknown, right? We don't know what's happening at this particular point in time. Things change on a dime, and they have been changing on a dime for the last 8 weeks. And so these are the types of things that you want to take a look at and say, okay, so this is how we think it's going to go. But, things could change. So things might not go the way that we think they're going to go. I mean, right now, a lot of government organizations are optimistic that we'll be opening in the summer sometime. But we don't know, right? We don't know if it'll be June. We don't know if it'll be July. We don't know if it's August. We have no idea whether or not there'll be a downturn again in the fall. So all of those things are kind of contingency plans. So the more heads you have in the game, the better. So use your stars to help you to do that, because it also engages them in the future of the business. Because think of it from this perspective. Right now we're in an unknown, and whenever we're in an unknown, we go into fear, right? So that happens for yourself, that happens for your people. And when you're in fear, they're not necessarily as productive. So even if they're at home working, they're not as productive because they're still thinking about, what's going to happen, how are things going to go, all the types of things that people have been fearful about. If you start enlisting people in terms of building your future, it gives them something to focus on, which will help them to move things forward. So think of it from that perspective. So now that we've done a little bit of a recap around that, let's take a look at your hiring strategy. So as I mentioned before, your why is your gold here. So on that little cheat sheet that we pulled together over here, the more detail you can put into the why section, the better understanding you have of the characteristics that equal failure in your organization, or the characteristics that equal success in your organization. So when you're actually looking for new people, you want to focus on them having the characteristics that will equal success, and stay away from the people who are in the failure area. So let's go into a little bit more thought around that. Because you need to kind of look at, again, it's back to what I was saying earlier over here, is that you made decisions to hire people in the past. So those people that are not performing at their ideal basis at this point, when you take a look at them, they're your squeaky wheels. Why did you hire them in the past? What was it that they did that convinced you? What was it that you did not do? A lot of times I'll talk to business owners, and they'll say to me, actually, you know what? I hired that person, and there was something in the pit of my stomach said, don't do it, but I overrode it because I had too many things on my plate, and I couldn't deal with another 2 weeks of not having somebody in that particular role. So I hired them, and I regret actually making that hire. So those little niggly things, I want you to really consider what those niggly things were. Why did you make the decision to hire those people? What changed? So, you know, I mean, another example of that is that, and this is definitely an example for me, what I find is that I've made these types of mistakes in the past where I find that I am much better managing people who are very competent at what they do. I think a lot of business owners are like that because we've got high standards and we want things to happen, and we usually want them to happen fast. So if you have to repeat something over and over and over again, it becomes quite frustrating. And so when you do that, you kind of step back a little bit and you stop necessarily putting it out there, because it starts to feel like a big chore to continually have to repeat yourself on something. And then you let it slide, and then performance becomes worse and worse as motivation goes down on both sides. So I've seen that come up a number of different times. So some of the things that you need to look at is, how do you manage people better, right? What kind of characteristics do you need in the individuals that you're hiring that would make it easier for you to manage those people? So all of those types of things go into the criteria nut in terms of the success side of the business. I'm going to stop right here. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to get you guys to, okay, having some difficulty with my mouse, so I can't stop sharing my screen. Probably run out of batteries. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it open. I'm just gonna stop for a second, and I'm gonna get you guys to ask questions. So just unmute yourself and pop in and ask any questions, because I covered a fair bit right now, and I just wanna make sure that you're actually where I'm at. So do you have any questions? You can pop them into the chat box too if you want to.
I think that there's some questions in the chat box from Blessing, who's actually in Africa. So I think that her questions are there, and it was with respect. I'll let Blessing, you go ahead and ask. Blessing,
yeah, ask the question, Blessing.
Blessing, are you online? Can you hear us?
Yes, I'm online. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Go for it.
Okay. What I asked when you talked about using your stars for brainstorming.
Yeah, your audio is coming through great.
Feeling stars for brainstorming. I'm saying that when you use only your stars, the other members of the team might feel left out, and they might not want to contribute to what, especially when they might want to hold back because they felt you don't regard them as important members of the organization. What will you do about that as a head of an organization?
So I didn't get all of your question because your sound came through.
Her question was with respect to, you suggested using your stars as brainstorming, and she has a fear that that could be dangerous because then others will hold back and not really want to contribute. So they'll possibly withdraw. But I don't think that's what you meant. I think you meant, and I'm not sure I'm getting this right, Angela, is that you're just taking your stars aside and doing a separate brainstorming, so they're not really part of a whole group discussion. Is that correct? Yeah,
that's correct. So, I mean, it depends on your situation right now. If your team is still working, like all of your team is still working, a little bit different than if you have had to lay off your entire team and you're looking at bringing them back on. But what I would suggest is that you actually pull in, your stars are your stars for a reason. They always do what you want them to do. You trust them. So what I would suggest is they actually set up a separate meeting with just your stars, so that you're looking at some of these decisions that you're making with regards to the team as a group together, as opposed to just doing it in isolation on your own. If you were talking about the whole team, so if you were working with your entire team and only asking your stars, I get it 100%. Yeah, you're going to have your other people not obviously want to contribute, but you do. But so I wouldn't suggest that you do that with the whole team. So do it as a separate group. Does that answer your question, Blessing?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions?
Susie, what was yours when you said problems, not solutions? Were you referring to the complainers, or what were you referring to?
Yeah, like complainers are always talking about what the problems are and not necessarily offering any sort of solution or recommendation as to how to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, and then again, this is a question around, you know, have they been trained to actually come up with solutions? So I remember working with one of my very first managers. She was fantastic. She would always coach me into providing a solution. So whenever I came up to her and said, you know, I've got this particular problem, I can't move forward, her question would always be, okay, so what are some of the solutions you've thought of to do this? So she actually trained me to come up with the solutions, so that from then on, whenever I had an issue, I would usually say, well, I'm thinking of actually doing this, and what is your feedback on it? So is that something that you've put in place with your complainers?
In the past, but I think it's a great point, because unless they know that they can come up with solutions and are empowered to do so, perhaps they feel powerless, and that's part of probably their issue, right?
Yeah, so the nice thing about right now is that you've got an opportunity, and one of the things I'm going to be covering is the communication side of things as we go on further, is that you've got an opportunity of actually sitting down with every single person of your team members and talking about their future in the organization. And at that point, you can get really clear in terms of what your expectations are. Because oftentimes when we hire people and we're busy and we're doing it organically and we've got stuff going on and we've got new client demands and everything, we don't always have the time to sit down with a new person when they first start off and be very clear in terms of what our expectations are to work well in our particular organization. And by having this, this list now of all the different characteristics of what makes your stars stars and what makes your steady people steady, those characteristics are things that you can take a look at as being your expectations for how well you work within your organization and what you expect of people to go forward. So, you know, when somebody makes a mistake, you can set them aside and basically say, you know, remember we talked about this? I'd like you to come up with this. Let's use the example of, you know, coming up with problems as opposed to solutions. So when they come up with another problem, you can go back and say, okay, remember we talked about this? I want you to go away right now and come up with, you know, 3 different solutions that you're thought of for this particular problem. And then let's talk about it going forward. So what you're doing is you're training people in terms of what your expectations are. You do it a couple of times and they get the idea that this is something they're going to do, unless they're not willing to move forward, right? So there's some people that get to a particular point where the motivation is so low that they're not engaged anymore and they don't really want to do a great job. And this is your opportunity to actually clean house with those types of individuals, according to labor standards, but it gives you an opportunity to clean house at this point. Does that help you, Susie?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Kimberly has a question.
Okay.
Go ahead, Kimberly. Do you want to ask it? It's in the chat.
Sure. I have my administrator actually is late for work probably 75% of the time.
Okay.
And this actually drives me crazy.
Right.
Yeah. I also feel like it's a reflection on some of her work. She's not as organized as she could be. And, you know, being an administrator, that's an important skill.
So does this person report into you, or do you, or is he?
Yeah, yeah, we work in the same office.
Okay. So again, what you can do is, again, set aside with that person and talk about your expectations and talk about what it's the example they're setting for the rest of the organization by always being late. Because you know,
no one sees her. It's just me.
Just you. Okay. Well, you
can talk about crazy.
Well, you can talk about how it affects you, right? Because if you're waiting for them, it's wasting your time, right? So let's say that you're
not waiting.
Not waiting?
I'm not waiting for her because it's, you know, she has her own job. I just feel like someone who's late, like it's just a reflection on their work, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, and we've had these conversations like many times. So I'm just like, do I let her go or do I keep having these? Or am I like being too type A to get frustrated?
Well, this question kind of pops into something that I call FaceTime. So a lot, not like FaceTime on the iPhone kind of thing, but FaceTime in terms of when oh good, my mouse works now. Okay, so, so in typical organizations where you have to work, 9 to 5 or whatever, where you go into the office, a lot of your impression of how well somebody is doing depends on what you see them doing in the moment. So if you're not there all the time, you can just see them do whatever, or if they're highlighting their particular pluses or their wins, you'll see them doing that. So you get an impression in terms of what they're doing. Versus now what's happening with a lot of people working offline, like remotely, you have to shift that FaceTime to results. So it's much more management by results as opposed to management of what you see happening at that particular point in time. So this might be something that actually you might want to take a look at with regards to this person as to whether or not you want to keep them or let them go. If it's driving you crazy and it's making a huge impact on their actual results, then you might want to take a look at possibly letting them go if they're relatively easy to replace. Because again, if they've been in the organization for a long time, have a lot of intellectual property, have a lot of institutional knowledge, that would be very difficult for you to get rid of. You might want to take a look at a different way of doing this, because if she's actually getting good results in her work and it's just a question of what time she starts, maybe that's something that you need to let go of, because it really does come down to the results. If she's getting fantastic results, it's just a shift in terms of how you're actually managing. So you're managing towards results as opposed to specific behaviors that you're looking at. Mm-hmm. Does that help?
I think that Mafalda brought up a really good point, Mafalda, and because that's what your business is, Mafalda, why don't you ask your question?
Sure, my question, Kimberly, was, is the person that is always arriving late from a different culture than yours?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Then maybe that could be a cultural issue. Cultures look at time in a different way.
Yeah.
And for you, time is exactly 8 a.m. And for other cultures, time is elastic. It's not fixed. And so this might be a cultural difference that have to be negotiated and dealt between the parties, and a mutual understanding about what that is and how you can accommodate that. And it may be just that, cultural awareness.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mafalda. That's definitely the case in a lot of situations. So good one. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. I've got 2 more points. So I'll share my screen again unless there's something else that's pressing, or we can hold on till the end.
Go ahead, Angela.
Okay. Okay. So really what you want to get to is you basically want to get to a team that's, it becomes easy to manage. So I'll give you an example. So an organization that I worked with last year, the woman who came to me because she had a small team. It was actually ran relatively well, and then all of a sudden it didn't. So there was a big misunderstanding between her and her original first employee. And it was starting to spill over into interactions with her whole team. There's, like her answers were usually quite short in team meetings. She didn't always stay later to do the stuff that she used to do. Generally, there was a vibe of not good in the organization. And the owner came to me because she actually hated going into work anymore. And she didn't like her job, even though it was her company and she's the one who actually created it. And that was because of this one issue with the team. So she brought me in to take a look at, and I did one-to-one meetings with each of the individuals in the group, and we talked about what was working and what wasn't. And what it turned out was that this employee was her very first employee, and when the woman went off on maternity leave, she basically turned over most of the duties to this first employee. And when she came back, she didn't thank the employee as much as the employee had hoped for. And so that built up resentment over time. And so that resentment ended up building over almost 2 years. So they never really talked about it. So sometimes these types of issues can come up, and they come up years beforehand. So that's back to what I was saying earlier about, you know, where motivation actually drops down because you stopped communicating. But you want a team that comes back to you so that you go into work where you feel joyful and it's easy, right? You don't want to spend all the extra energy that's involved in actually, you know, like trying to deal with all those squeaky wheels, taking your eye off of your vision, that kind of thing. So all those little characteristics of what stops you. So if you're in a situation right now where you're about to bring your team back on board, really take a look at, again, go back to that sheet that we did and look at the whys and look at some of the things that drive you crazy about your team members. It could be small, little, tiny things like what you were saying in terms of somebody being late, or maybe it's the same mistake that the person makes over and over and over again that you keep having to say to them. Or maybe it's something that you have to explain how to do over and over and over again. All those types of things. So anything that takes your energy off of running your business and achieving your vision, you want to take a look at those little niggly things and deal with them when you actually do one-to-one with them. So let's talk about that. So the last piece around the recruitment side of things is really you're taking a look at the, you know, at your gradual back to work plan. You're taking a look at your holes. You're taking a look at the characteristics that you require, your hiring criteria that you now need. And now it's a question of when. So when do you bring the people back? So when do you bring back, you know, all the individuals that you currently have in your team? When do you need to hire each one of the people that you need to fill the extra holes that are there? And one of the things you need to remember is that it typically takes between 4 weeks and 8 weeks to hire somebody. And that's on the fast side. Sometimes it could take up to 3 months to actually hire the right person for a position. So consider that when you're looking at the timing of bringing your people back on board again, because it does sometimes take some time to actually fill the hole. And you don't want to make the type of hiring mistakes that you made in the past. So the last piece that I want to talk about is communication. So when you're communicating, so as a whole, what you want to do is you want to bring your whole team together and you want to talk about your vision, because your vision may have changed as a result of COVID. You've pivoted your business. You may have changed some of the services that you're offering. You may have changed how you're actually offering your services. You may have changed how you're actually doing work. Are you going to continue doing more remote work? Those types of things affect your vision. So you need to share that vision again with your entire team. The other thing is show your appreciation, because people, as I mentioned before, you know, that example that I gave you, the whole issue with the entire team was as a result of the owner not appreciating the employee in the way that the employee wanted them to be appreciated and recognized. So recognize your people and appreciate them. And then talk about your reentry plan as a big thing. You're not really talking about the details of when each person's going to come back, but just as a whole, so the overview of it. And then at that point in time, set up one-to-one meetings with your stars, your steady eddies, and your squeaky wheels. So you want to be honest and direct, and you want to lay out the plan for each employee's future, including your expectations and how you see them fitting into what your new services are and the new way that you're actually doing your business as well. Okay, now I'm going to open it up for, I think that was the last slide. Yeah, just a quick recap. So what we've done is we've assessed your team. So you've got your 3 different types. You've got your stars, you've got your steady people, and then you've got your squeaky people. Your why list, again, the more you flesh that out, the more helpful it's going to be for all of this going forward. You've created your team rebuilding blueprint. So this is basically how you're actually going to bring your people back, staggered over time, which people at what point, how things have been reorganized in your organization if you don't have everybody in the right spots anymore. You've enlisted your stars to initiate the whole program, to get them to brainstorm, to help you to actually achieve this. And you've developed your hiring strategies in terms of who are the people that you need to bring in to actually fill in the holes of what has now been identified. And you've also let your squeaky wheels, the ones that are not a fit anymore, go as well. So you're going to have to, if you do that, you're going to have to give them notice so that you can really, again, deal with the intellectual property that needs to be transferred, or any of the skills that they need, or any of the knowledge that they have to other people in your organization, and then, or pay them out for the time in lieu of notice. And you've communicated. And there we go, that's questions. So the other thing too is, if you email me at ahite@chrysalis.ca, I can send you the slides. And then if you need any other resources, actually my resource site is dreamteam.solutions, and I have a whole bunch of resources there for people management resources and leadership resources. Okay, now we're going to go back to more questions.
Maybe there is an opportunity to do a webinar and help you and look at culture and how this, yes, absolutely. We've talked about that, Mafalda. You know, all those, the cultural differences in our, especially for people that are starting a business and growing a business, is that there's so many foreign workers we're bringing in, and Canada is so multicultural. Is, you know, we thrive on multiculturalism. So Mafalda, I think that's a great idea. Quickly tell the group what your business is.
Sure. Hi, good morning, good afternoon, everybody. So the businesses that I do is I provide intercultural services. So I help people better handle the differences that exist. Like the example of, I arrive always on time and somebody that works with me arrives always late. Sometimes those differences are rooted in cultural differences. The way that we establish relationship, the ways that we establish trust, the way that we manage coworkers is rooted in our cultural style, and we may not be aware of what is our automatic blueprint. And so what I do is I do training, provide sessions or coaching, depending on what is needed, either is between the contact people that have one culture with the other one, or with the entire team. And so that integrates, that helps integration of multicultural teams, that helped maximizing your diversity component and optimizing resources, minimizing communication misunderstandings, etc. So that's what I do. So I provide services either for corporations or for individuals, depending on what is needed.
Thank you, Mafalda. And I think, Marg, you have raised a very important point, because many of us have worked with millennials and it drives us crazy when we're 68 years old. Go ahead, Marg, talk about your, share your.
Yeah, that, you know, it was interesting when Kimberly mentioned that problem. One of my former employees came immediately to mind. And, you know, no matter what happened, she could never get to work on time, never. Right. Now, mind you, she would stay till midnight if I needed her to work on a project. So it wasn't so much a lack of motivation as just, you know, scheduling, timing. She left me to open a bar, which I thought was ideal because the hours were much more conducive to her lifestyle. So anyway, but it is challenging dealing with a very diverse group. And you make some very valid points, Angela. What I particularly like is that this is a really good time to lay out a plan with your team and really explain and revisit your expectations. You know, often we share expectations when we hire someone, but then as time goes on, we forget to revisit them when we do the employee evaluations. So I think it's really a great opportunity for all of us now to look at laying out expectations at this time as we work our way back to normal, the new normal.
And the other thing about that is that really when you take a look at your expectations, it's really how you do work at your particular organization, which is another term for that is your company culture. Because as small business owners, we build a company culture, but we're also building that very organically. And we're building it as you grow, you're actually building your company culture, and you may not be consciously building it. So this gives you an opportunity to do that by putting together your people plan, by taking a look at your expectations, by looking at the results that you actually want to achieve, by looking at the vision that you want to create in terms of your new business going forward. You're actually consciously creating your culture at this point in time. And that is, again, a really, I mean, a blessing for, you know, this particular time that we're in right now with the COVID thing, because we have put our businesses on hold. A lot of us have. I mean, some of us have had essential services, so we've gone kind of crazy, which is the opposite of. But if you have put your business on hold, by doing this planning now, it gives you the opportunity to come back with a much, much stronger team, which will make you a lot happier and get you to a point of, again, that ease and grace and joy in terms of building and growing your business.
Thank you, Angela.
Sorry, go ahead, Nara.
I was just going to say thank you. And I really think it is a great opportunity for business owners to upgrade their teams.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely.
So that actually ties into a question that's kind of related. And I'm thinking of the past when I had the magazine and other things. We had about 30 people working for us at one point. And there comes a time where when you're starting a business and you're growing a business, you see people fitting in certain place. But then they actually don't have the skills anymore, and you want to demote them.
Right.
And but you still want them on the team, but you don't see them in that category anymore.
Yeah.
How do you handle demotion of someone?
Yeah, well, again, I guess that's the point of, you know, putting your people into those three categories, because at one point they may have been stars, right?
Yeah.
Because they fit your organization perfectly. And now they might just be steady eddies. And the thing is that every business requires steady eddies, right? You need those people who are reliable, who you can trust to do what they need to do. They may not be like fantastic in terms of everything they do all the time, but they consistently do the work and do it well. And rewarding those people is key and important. And as long as they understand how they fit into the organization and what their role is towards achieving your vision, you can still use them, and you can still keep them and to do what you need to do there. Unless, of course, they're at a point where, you know, their skills no longer match your organization at all. So that's when you go into the point of, you know, the one-on-one conversations with them to say, you know what, you've been a valuable member of the organization, but our organization is now moving in this direction. And unfortunately, you don't have the skills to be able to meet us, to help us to go in that particular direction. So you're going to have that difficult conversation.
Thank you so much, Angela. Before we close off, are there any, the slide, Alicia is making sure that you'll be emailed the link to this seminar, to this webinar, as well as the slides. Thank you, Angela, so much.
Okay.
I just want to go through, I see names on the screen, and I know that some of you don't like to put on your video, but it would be great to know who you are. So can I just just so that you get a sense, Angela, to find out who's here. We know Melissa is from Vancouver. There's Nikki. Nikki, where are you from? Oh, unmute yourself, ladies.
Yeah, maybe you can unmute it.
Mississauga.
Mississauga, great. And RGO Checo, where are you from?
Toronto.
Anne, where are you from?
Oh,
I'm from Toronto.
Oh, RGO Checo is a different person. Okay, and where are you from, sir?
Yeah, I'm from Toronto.
And what do you do? Please introduce yourself if you can.
Yes, I'm a claims manager with the Toronto Transit Commission.
Fantastic. How did you find out about our webinar?
Through Gina Greco.
Fantastic, fantastic, wonderful. Thank you for being on. Catherine Gardner, welcome from Calgary.
Thank you. I'm just outside of Cochrane and I'm having fussy internet. So sometimes, well, not internet, but sometimes if I take my video off, it's sharper. So anyway, I help companies commercialize products and services. Thank you for this, Angela. It's great information, both as we work with other companies and then our own. So.
Well, now you've connected, and that's great because you're both chairs, and now you can do more connections together.
Yeah, definitely.
And Susie is a chair in Vaughan and runs 2 boards. Susie, welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
There you are. Great, great. And Susie's been on just about every webinar, and I really appreciate your support, Susie, for all the webinars, and really love having you here. Mafalda is a GYB member in Vancouver, but is in Peru right now because unfortunately she was there for family. Her father passed away, so she is in Peru. Welcome from Peru, and your voice came out loud and clear, Mafalda, so great internet service now.
Thank you.
Susan, where are you from? Susan Candelaff.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am from Calgary and I own a staffing firm here called Executive Solutions. So I really appreciated your practical tips, Angela. I thought you were bang on. And I sent you a note just saying exactly that. Practical, realistic, and smart. I thought it was very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Who's KT iPhone? KT iPhone? Not sure. Does anyone know? KT? I don't know. But Marjorie, we know. Marjorie. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I just.
Go ahead, KT.
Yes, blessing.
Hi, can you see me now?
Yes, I can see you, Marjorie. And we know you because you take those beautiful photographs for Marg all the time. And I'm so envious. Alicia, she's the photographer. Go ahead, Marjorie.
Yes, not really a photographer. It's not even a hobby. It's more of a compulsion. I do love to take photos. I'm radically creative. And I do branding, rebranding, and I work with small business owners. Right now, I'm a gardener because I'm starting to plant my garden. So
Nice.
plant those seeds now in everything. The seeds of your business and the seeds in the garden, because things will grow. Looking forward to it. And thank you. That was volumes of information.
And Kimberly is Haircut on Wheels, which we all kind of need right now.
Yeah.
Kimberly.
Haircut on Wheels in what city?
Toronto.
Toronto, okay. Not quite so helpful for us Vancouver people.
But she has great ideas. She's putting up, have you done your YouTubes yet with how to cut your bangs and all that stuff?
I did one video last weekend on kids cuts, which is where I started in the business. So, but I will move. I was thinking actually of doing a Zoom do-it-yourself where people could actually do cuts together. What do you think?
Sure.
Come up with the ideas. I sent you that link. Did you get it on the woman from the States who showed how to do her husband's hair step by step by step? Okay, good.
Yeah. It was good.
Go for it, Kimberly. We need you to do it. What about Liz? Liz down, I see, who's Liz? KT, iPhone, Liz, no response?
KT iPhone actually sent a little thing here. I saw it.
No trouble with my mic. Oh, I see.
Yeah, trouble with mic. Chimera. Not sure if I'm pronouncing that properly.
Oh.
I believe, I'm wondering if it's, no, it's probably not Blessing from.
No, Blessing is in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I met her in Tampa Bay, Florida. Chimera, you're the one that does the shows. I'm pretty sure she is. She has a podcast. She's fabulous.
She's saying yes.
Yes. She has a podcast that she does and I met her in Baltimore. She's fabulous.
Okay.
Great.
She is the Stroke Diva Fabulous radio show.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
That is so great. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, we don't know. That's why I wanted to quickly do this because I was seeing names that I didn't know. What about Liz? Who is Liz? Okay, don't know. She'll come on. Melissa is in Vancouver. And Melissa, do you want to come on? You're still in the car. So she's driving in her car with her dog right now. But she has an incredible construction firm as well as another business that is in tourism because she has a yacht that they take out people on different excursions. And so that's going to be the challenging one. What do you do when tourism has stopped? And what do you do?
Oh, hi, Barb. Are you speaking with me?
I am.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm a kitchen designer. I own a kitchen company in Ontario, near St. Catharines in Fonthill.
And which board are you on?
I'm on the Niagara board.
With Crystal. I know, that's what I thought. So
Yeah.
wonderful. That's great.
This has
So
just been a world of knowledge. It's been such a great help, and it couldn't have come at a better time.
Yeah, and if you need, so I do weekly blogs as well. You can, if you go into dreamteam.solutions, which is
Okay.
my head there, I do free resources. So I offer free resources and then tips and tricks. So I also do a weekly blog just on managing people. So it's all about people management and leadership skills for business owners, basically.
So here is what I would like all of you to do, because you now know who Angela is. She has been introduced to you. Please follow her on LinkedIn and like her, because every week she gives great tips. So please just make a note of it to yourself. Do a like for Angela, because, you know, for all of us, it is about, and I mean, obviously respond to her too, but it is the likes to know that that she has a following, because her tips are great, and every week she comes up with a new one, and they're relevant more today than ever before. So
yeah, I'm doing a series right now on remote work. So the first one is really about fear, overcoming fear, distraction, and collaboration. The second one is about motivating and inspiring your team. And the third one is if your remote team isn't working, what are the characteristics of it and what do you do to it? So those are three that I'm offering shortly. So again, if you just go onto my website there and sign up for the newsletter, you'll get those articles on an ongoing basis. And then what I can do is, once I get your email addresses, I can actually, or your names, I can link in with you on LinkedIn as well.
great. And RGO Checo, thank you for checking us out and being a part of today's webinar. Get more men on board. We want your support. We want that to happen. So thank you so much, Angela, and everyone have a great day and great weekend. And thank you for participating. And send your reviews to Alicia.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciated all of you coming out and all your great questions. It was good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, blessing. And
bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.